How would you compose a theme for a Blue Mage in Final Fantasy? Usually this class is tied to monsters, beasts, and the rigorous study of enemy magic. When you think of characters like Strago from Final Fantasy VI or Quistis from Final Fantasy VIII, you might expect something mystical, slightly dangerous, or deeply academic to reflect a scholar of monster lore. But Quina is different. Quina isn't studying monsters to save the world. Quina is studying monsters to see how they taste. Quina is a chef, a gourmand, and arguably the strangest character in Final Fantasy history. Nobuo Uematsu didn't write a mystical scholar's theme. He wrote a bizarre, clumsy, and completely unserious march. He had to score a character defined by the Japanese word Shokudou, the way of food, a figure who treats eating not just as a need, but as a lifelong philosophical journey. Hello, I'm Emiliano Giaquinta, and today we're gonna take a look at one of the most unapologetic, ancient, and groovy tracks from Final Fantasy IX, which is Quina's theme. Let's take a look together. As in previous episodes, let's take a look at the context Uematsu had for this character. Quina's keyword is often translated as Indulgence, but the Japanese word Shokudou is brilliant. While it means esophagus, it uses two kanji, one that is used for food or eating, while the second one is used for path or way. So the hidden meaning behind it is the way of food. For Quina, eating is quite literally a way of life, a philosophical path to enlightenment. Quina has absolutely no existential dread. While Bibi worries about life and death and Steiner worries about duty, Quina only worries about finding yummy food. Because Quina is the ultimate comic relief, the music has to completely break the tension of the game. Uematsu achieves this by throwing out the traditional orchestral rulebook and creating a track that sounds less like a hero's journey and more like a chaotic, disorganized parade through a swamp in combination with some ancient vibes, which are likely tied up to the Ku clan. The first thing that establishes Quina's character is the rhythm section. We have not one or two, but 5 different instruments playing in a tribal-like percussion section. Let's listen to the first 3 that share the same rhythm. Cool. I scored this as a set of bongos, congas, and taiko, plus the next 2 ones that we'll see, bass drum, and also tambourine. The first 3 in the original soundtrack, they play pan to left, center, and right, respectively. But if I need to be honest, I believe that they are mostly all variations of different types of taiko drums. So no conga or bongo there. And it's an important consideration because if they really are just pure taiko percussion, it could hint at the royal power of the shogun dynasties. In the end, the Ku are part of a clan with clear hierarchies of power. Let's hear to the second layer of percussion that is added afterwards. And together. This is the driving energy of the theme. It is simple but effective on signaling the downbeat in the case of the second round, in combination with the mix we have at the beginning. On top of this, we have also bass guitar playing the same rhythm as the first round of percussion, and all together they build up the whole spirit of the song. We can hear that. The bass guitar is simple, as you can expect. The pitches are the root and the fifth, D and A accordingly all the time. And this prevents us yet knowing if the song is a minor or a major flavor song, right? Because we only have the root and the fifth. But still, together they create a bottom heavy feel. It perfectly mimics Quina's physical walk, right? Like a large, carefree creature lumbering clumsily through the Ku's march. The collection of all these instruments are together very energetic, but we are not even in the melody yet. For a Blue Mage, we could expect something magical like a metal-pitched percussion or maybe mystical word instrument, Yet Uematsu gives the lead to a duet of synths. Let's listen to that. Now, the theme kicks off with its powerful percussive groove, a 2-measure loop that feels both tribal and playful. The main melody is introduced by the synth lead, presenting remarkably a simple yet effective hook that builds with each repetition. On the first pass, the synth plays a D, leaps up an octave to a second D, and then leaps once more to a third D before descending through what it sounds like a Dorian scale. It could be Mixolydian too, as we don't know yet at this point if it's minor or major, but this gets clarified later. What I am trying to explain is basically it plays 3 times D, so 2 leaps of an octave, and then a descent. Very simple, yet very, very catchy. Let's listen to it one more time. If you are asking yourself what's the difference between the two synths, well, it's just difference of texture. So together they build up the texture we hear on the original soundtrack, but they play the same pitches. There's no difference of octave between them. So after the intro, which is quite long and we only have percussion and the bass guitar, plus this very short section A, we have a bridge. So the very energetic synth suddenly disappears and we get a sustained piano. It's a very low dyad of octaves playing a D. And if you ask me, besides giving air to the melody, I picture it like the energetic part is like Quina's cooking, wild and fast, while the sustained piano more or less represents Quina sitting down to it. Let's listen to that. Cool, it's this very simple detail here. Sustain. And then we move to the section E, which will have finally a more characteristic melody. So if section A was preparing the food and the bridge was sitting down to eat, we know what section A prime, the repetition of section A is, right? It's the endless buffet. It's actually eating. Section A prime showcases the actual main melody, which is carried by a choir. Let's listen to all together. So the choir is an octave apart, likely a mix of alto and tenor voices here, giving the theme a feeling of primal, of ancient. Orchestration is all on this piece. We don't know much about the Quina Quen when we hear this theme for the first time. But we do have a feeling that this race is primigenial. Let's listen to the choir in isolation. Very unique in the terms of the colors Uematsu decided to use to paint this music. Speaking of primigenial, as you might know, Final Fantasy IX has 2 worlds, Gaia, the home world, and Terra. 5,000 years before the events of the game, Garland, yes, we're borrowing here the name from Final Fantasy I main villain, tries to fuse the worlds as his world Terra is dying. The experiment fails, but in the process, some of the buildings of Terra end up in Gaia. In the game, when we visit those like Ibsen Castle, we hear either choirs or even rearrangements of A Place to Call Home theme. Why is this relevant? Well, while we know that only Genomes are the only known Terran humanoid species, we could deduct that the Qu clan is either equally primitive or be even more adventurous, to even hint they do come from Terra. Well, the latter probably could be more of a fanfiction than a fact, but yeah, let's keep on moving. Section B is quite quirky. We get the synth to rest, we get some percussion to rest, and then we have a different melody in the choir. The choir is answered back by first the synth, then the piano. It really feels a bit like a mashup of what happened so far, but it's effective. Let's listen to it. So as you could see in section B, we start first without the synth here. Then we do have the answer, the callback from the synth and the piano. Then shows the choir again. So it's a bit like a collection of ideas, right? If Quina is hungry in section A, Quina is still hungry in section B too. The music reflects this single-minded, pure indulgence. The track has to loop seamlessly because Quina's appetite is endless. For the final repetition of section A, the third one, we will start not with the whole melody, but actually the second half. So basically it's gonna play something like... which is a very simple way of introducing change, right? We don't repeat exactly the same, just we repeat a part of it. Let's hear it in context. This very simple motif resolves down fifth from A to D. It's very simple, but it works well. So why not to do it? Following this, we will hear that the percussion continues. We hear a final grand piano press, and then the theme loops back again. One more thing, if we observe the general structure of the song, right? We have the introduction, section A, the bridge, section A prime that introduces the choir, a section B and section A prime prime, because in the end it's slightly different. We are just hearing the second part, and then it repeats. It is not a traditional song form, but it works as background music, mainly because it's driven by percussion. So every time the song sounds, we have this tribal feeling and we're immediately connected with Quina. Quina's theme is a masterclass of world building. On the surface, the quirky synths and the bouncy rhythms make us laugh, treating the character as pure comic relief. But underneath that humor, Uematsu uses the primal taiko drums and ancient choirs to hint that the Qu clan might be much older and deeply connected to the ancient history of the planet than we might ever realize. In a game that deals with incredibly heavy themes of war, planetary assimilation, and existential dread, Quina is the anchor of levity. This track is a brilliant reminder to the player. Sometimes you just need to stop worrying about the end of the world and just go and catch a frog. Live the moment, cook good food, and share it with your friends and family. Thanks for watching. In the next episode, we will talk about the main character, the main lead protagonic role, Sidan Tribal himself. He has kind of an upbeat, very childish theme, and we will take a look if it really represents him or not. By the way, what do you think about the theory of the Ku being an ancient race from Terra? Leave a comment and let me know. See you next time!